Hello, guys. It's yet another ATP Weekly with me and Mario. It's going to be Barcelona, Munich, and Bucharest. We have a lot to talk about today. Of course, the big event, the biggest narrative in terms of the main players on the ATP circuit was Barcelona, where we had a repeat of the Monte Carlo final, which I mean, I remember we were talking about this last time and sort of like softly previewing Barcelona and saying that kind of like for years it's been, Nadal, the main favorite, then Alcaraz, the main favorite. And this year it kind of wasn't the case because, well, neither of them is around. And basically the main favorites for Barcelona were the players who went deep in Monte Carlo. So you never know if they are going to repeat it. And in fact, they actually did. So let's start by talking about Casper Ruud, because if anyone has been, well, just today living under a rock, Casper Ruud won that final. So that's actually the main difference compared to the Monte Carlo tournament, is that Casper Ruud won that final and did that in pretty impressive fashion as well.
Yeah, played very very well. Actually, you watch the first couple of games, 3 4 games, and you think like, Tsitsipas broke first in the match, started pretty well, so it was like, I don't know, are we going to watch a repeat of what happened last week? Maybe different score, but still maybe the same winner. And no, in the end, not. And I would say also that after that, let's say, false start in terms of the score, Casper has actually been pretty dominant today. You know, it's been more or less, I would say, we can also say more or less the opposite than what happened last week, with maybe just the difference that since Tsitsipas broke first today, there's been a little bit of maybe uncertainty at the beginning. But in the end, I would say that, just like last week, it's been overall, a straightforward win, I would say, because in the end, having got that break in the first set at the 12th game, avoiding the tiebreak, and then in the second set, it was, in my opinion, clearly, of course, the better player. Ruud was looking, fresher. Tsitsipas was looking a bit shaky this week overall, even if, still did the pretty, good job, is still reaching the final and winning those battles. Maybe, a couple of months ago, that wouldn't have been the case in this, pretty even matches, especially maybe the one against Diaz Costa. But, overall, throughout the whole week, Ruud has looked like the more stable and fresher player. And in the end, in the final, mm, you know, um, that impression has remained the same. And he played better, deserved the win, and finally, he got freed of this. I never won a title above 250 level, so that's probably the main storyline about this final and this win. But actually, also well deserved first title of the season, and well deserved because he's been pretty consistent, and too good, in my opinion, to still be without one trophy, considering the way he's played, the way he carried himself throughout these first 4 months of the season. I would say that it's actually a pretty deserved one. Now third in the race, so pretty good position to to think about a Turin spot, which at this point, if he is not able to get it, it's because he will be a failure in the next months, because his position looks pretty good, especially with the level he's showing and the big tournaments that are coming on clay. So yeah, I would say that a very good week, and as almost all his season so far, with a big difference that he also got the trophy.
Yeah, when it comes to Casper, definitely like that was a a week free of drama, basically, and that wasn't necessarily because his opponents weren't that good. I mean, he had Arnaldi and Echeverri there. Someone on my Twitter actually commented today that Tsitsipas was unfortunate because he had informed Diaz Acosta and Lajovic in his quarter and semi, and I'm like, Wow. I mean, Ruud at the same time had Arnaldi and Echeverri. And really, are we going to say that Diaz, Acosta, and Lajovic are unfortunate opponents to get in quarters and semis of a
No, I don't think
500?
so.
The truth is that one made tough work of his opposition, the other didn't. And that was definitely part of the final. But yeah, it was just tough to trust Casper that he was going to play well in this because of what he did in Monte Carlo, because of how clearly, on that occasion, it was like a little too much for him. However, I have to say that it was still, despite Tsitsipas being not too energetic, it was just good to see Casper playing like the sort of tennis that has been winning matches for him this year. That's what he showed up with today in the final. That aggression, that backhand down the line, the backhand passes, some elements that in his game weren't really existing before 2023, or at least he wasn't willing to go for them too much. He like fully took over. Gian's talking about the moment when, but like after that, he really took over the match completely and never let go. And that is, to me, progress. That is a 500 title, which, well, maybe isn't a Grand Slam, maybe even isn't 1,000. Maybe if you think about it, it's not actually that big a deal that he has a 500. But I mean, even he himself has been mentioning that quite a lot. So clearly for him, it was also a thing, and it was also something that he was paying attention to. So, it couldn't be bigger, it couldn't be more massive for Casper Ruud to win this one. Definitely not. And I mean, yeah, he didn't drop a set. It's been such an intense clay court season so far. Last week we were talking about Ruud and Tsitsipas and sort of where they fit into the whole grand scheme of things in terms of the rest of the clay season, Roland Garros, in terms of the main favorites. Has either of them for you breached the gap towards Alcaraz, Sinner, Djokovic, or is it still pretty wide? And also, has Ruud breached the gap to Tsitsipas? Because I think last week we said that basically after the Monte Carlo final, it would be kind of impossible to treat them both the same in terms of winning big titles. Is it possible now?
It's a very tough question, I would say, because for me, I have to be fully honest. For me, you know, yeah, Casper winning the biggest title of his career for the first time above 250 level, but overall, for me, it's kind of been quite a narrative-less week in talking about Barcelona, meaning that, I don't know, it was looking like these were the two players who, yes, some obstacles for sure, but were the two, favorite to meet again in the final. And so, yeah, I don't know. Overall, Tsitsipas has looked quite shaky this week, in my opinion. But maybe it was also, because of the past week's efforts in Monte Carlo, and definitely these couple of weeks still are, amazing for him, because he went in 2 weeks from 25th in the race to fifth. So, and also back in the top 10. So having, bigger seed also in this clay big and upcoming events. So I don't know if the gap has been, closed. Uh, I still don't think so, because as long as I'm not watching still the big, three favorites struggling in Rome, maybe I still don't, put them down, in my power rankings, thinking about the French Open. As for the gap between Tsitsipas and Ruud, probably, maybe it's not a big gap. Probably last week we've been, a bit too harsh, maybe, making that gap probably a bit bigger than what it is. But maybe if we, consider the two things, Tsitsipas having, showed the best version of himself in the 1,000 final, and Ruud having, maybe makes a little bit of a difference. I don't know. Overall, Tsitsipas still won, even if, all in Monte Carlo is big trophies on clay. I would say that overall, maybe, I agree when they are treating them the same, but with the slight advantage to Tsitsipas. Yeah, I still giving maybe a slight edge. Not that much, but a slight edge, probably.
Yeah, you guys in the chat are saying pretty much a lot of stuff that I agree with. That well, even if Madrid and Rome now would go wrong for Tsitsipas and Ruud, that really doesn't change their French Open prospects. I mean, they would still enter it like well rested and enter it with yeah, just a lot of chances to go to the quarters, to the semis. When it comes to their chances in terms of yeah, the gap between them, to me, it's probably a bit closer than I thought last week. I still think Steph is like considerably ahead because if they play a top three player in the final, if they play Djokovic, Alcaraz, or Sinner in the final, I would just trust Tsitsipas to to have a chance at an upset than rather than Ruud. But it's a fantastic thing for Casper to perform in the one of the biggest matches of his career, at least the biggest match he won in his career. For him to finally have a really nice showing there, that's something huge. So I have to say that yeah, to me they are slightly closer right now, but I would still put Steph ahead, and I would also not really shake anything up with the top three, as you said. It would really take quite a lot. In fact, I think there's no real way for anyone in Monte Carlo and Barcelona to like get close to Djokovic, Alcaraz, Sinner, and where I have them in my head in terms of the French Open. Like if even if you win Monte Carlo and Barcelona, it just wouldn't
Yeah,
happen. Mostly because they weren't around as well. I mean, Sinner got injured in the semis. Alcaraz didn't play it. Djokovic played one event and
yeah,
lost
exactly.
to Ruud in the semis. So they also couldn't really show that they're better than these guys. Of course, to Struffy,
Yeah,
we'll get there, and
I wanted
also. Mhm.
to ask you if, I don't know, is it possible, according to you, to make a narrative between, about Tsitsipas, if we consider the finals he played above 250 level, he's 3 love in Monte Carlo and 117 everywhere else. And in the end, he not always played, Djokovic or Alcaraz or Nadal, but also, Ogier Aliassime in Rotterdam, or Casper today, or I don't know if I was thinking about this, and I was, it's a bit weird. I don't know if I can make a narrative up, upon this, or maybe just not. And so I wanted maybe to ask you if
Mhm.
there can be, something up on this.
Yeah, it's slightly similar to that 011 in ATP 500s. That like I know that that's not what you were asking about, but like that is definitely just total BS to me because if you have three ATP thousands and then ATP finals,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
clearly you're not gonna have a mental block in terms of 500s because well, who cares about that level really? Like it's only a major. It's only like a little step up from a 250, I think, in terms of how the players perceive it. It's not going to be something that like you want on your tombstone that well, hey, I won that one 500. Even though of course for some it might be a big deal. I don't know, Andrei Golubyev won an ATP 500, for example, and Richard Gasquet hasn't. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that with Tsitsipas, indeed it's a pretty huge record. I mean, a lot of these matches are against Novak Djokovic, a lot of these matches are against Nadal, a lot of these matches are against Alcaraz. Absolutely. Not every one of them, but I would still say that I haven't really seen a major problem for him. Like I don't know. Of course, all these matches he lost to Nadal, including one very tight. Like that's not a big deal to me. All these matches he lost to Djokovic. I mean, he just loses to Djokovic every time. Against Rublev, he's 1-1, I guess, in these big finals. Against Ruud, he's 1-1 now in these big finals, right? Who else did he play? Zverev, yeah. Ogier Aliassime indoors in a very strong campaign. Back in the day, I guess there was Team as well, right? Federer in Dubai, like of course I'm not gonna blame him for that loss because Federer was just too good. So probably just it mostly represents the well, not lack of quality, but just the fact that against the peaking players or against the very top players in the world, Tsitsipas is mostly losing, at least off clay. So I guess that's mostly it. Like today, I wouldn't really think it's anything mental for Tsitsipas, as we
Oh
said.
no,
I mean, he was
absolutely.
struggling in the quarters, he was struggling in the semis, barely got through the informed Diaz Acosta, as someone on my Twitter said. I mean, of course, all respect to Facundo Diaz Acosta, but like, yeah, that's just not a particularly tough draw, so we can't say he was unfortunate. But yeah, by the time he got to the final, I do think his gas tank was a little depleted, and well, he tried to like serve and volley, he tried to keep the points short a little bit, but Casper was too good on the day for that to work out. So all in all, I don't think I would say there's a mental block there in terms of the finals. He just generally doesn't have a strong record against the top players, and maybe that gets the sort of the chance to shine even more in these bigger finals, in these bigger opportunities that he gets. But especially that 0-11 at ATP 500s. I mean, it's a quirky stat. It's definitely going to get a lot of media attention, right? But
No, that's
yeah,
why I
it's not
prefer,
that big a deal.
that's why I prefer to make, the own speech, considering all the finals above,
Yeah,
a certain level. Because for me, 0-11 in 500 final doesn't mean, it's like, if someone is a slam champion and he is 0-5 in, in Masters final. Yeah, it's still curious, but you can't have a mental block in Masters finals if you want a slam,
yeah.
I can't believe it, So yeah, I definitely agree with you about this. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I guess that's Tsitsipas and Ruud from Barcelona. Any other
Another
standout
famous
performers?
is Kerber
Uh-huh.
on the female side. 3 slams and no 1,000 titles.
I was just
Yeah,
thinking of that, but I couldn't remember who it is. Yeah, and of course
yeah, it's
Stan has
Kerber.
3 slam titles, one ATP 1000 only, right?
Yeah, also,
Like it
even if that
happens.
one maybe is also, a sign of the strong era that, it's a lot of times there happen, kind of inexplicable things, let's say like that. There's not a real reason maybe why it happens. You would think, why Kerber has won the Australian Open, the US Open, and not, never Indian Wells or Miami. I don't know. I'm not able
Well,
to.
and Angelique Kerber actually, if serves weren't part of the game, she would be the best player
The
of all time.
greatest player of all time, you're right.
So yeah, I mean, kind of doesn't track, but whatever. Andrea Petkovic, say what you want to, and we will sometimes laugh, sometimes appreciate it. Yeah, and who else do we need to talk about in Barcelona? Who else was like the standout performer of the week for you, other than the two guys who kind of like stole all the headlines, basically?
Well, I don't know. I think that overall, I think that the two semifinalists, for example, have good reasons to be happy about their performance. Lajovic, for example, defended most of the points that he got last year and this week in Banja Luka, 250. He got 200 points here, reaching the semis, and actually played pretty good tennis. And also Echeverry, we watched him in the past week losing in that way to Tsitsipas, even if Tsitsipas then went on to win the title. So maybe, but this week I think also the semi-final, it was it was a pretty good showing. In the end, he's been maybe the one who got closer to create real troubles to Rudin, and otherwise, I would say, very very calm weeks. I would say that both of them can be quite satisfied. That's been the match between Tsitsipas and Diaz Acosta in the quarters. Maybe it hasn't been the best quality match, but it's still been, a good one to follow, because when there's some drama, and also for Diaz Acosta would have been huge to get that big win, regardless of, of how. So yeah, I would say that it's, in my opinion, this Barcelona week, I don't know if you agree, it's been good week, but maybe without that many of these narratives. For example, at times Barcelona used to get maybe bigger matches in quarter semis in terms of, the names of the players involved, but overall I think that these matches have been quite good still. So
Yeah,
That's
I
my
mean, it was kind of the same as in Monte Carlo, basically.
yeah,
The same players, the same stories, the same
yeah,
thing all
exactly.
over again. It's just that this time Ruud couldn't defeat the world number one in the semis, for example. But yeah, definitely, all in all, it was kind of like a two-way show in Barcelona. You mentioned that he has a Costa quarter with Steph. That was definitely quite entertaining. I wouldn't say the quality was that horrible, but it was definitely like taking a very special effort from Diaz Acosta, maybe not even to lead by a set there, but to come back there eventually from 1-3 in the third. And yeah, he kind of couldn't get over the finish line. Did stumble quite a lot there. And Lajovic, whom you mentioned, is definitely quite an interesting case as well. With that, well, he couldn't really defend his Banyaluka title. Of course, he could have played Bucharest instead, which is like kind of
Yeah.
like the successor of that event, but he actually chooses Barcelona. And well, I mean, you wouldn't expect it maybe when he played Umber in the second round, when he played Davidovich Fokina in the third one, Fields in the quarters, but he actually kept beating all of these guys and was also for a while really close to taking down Stefanos Tsitsipas. Was Echeverry, of course, yeah, it's good that you mentioned him as well. Was Arthur Fils beating Alex de Minaur anything major? And we should also probably talk about the Rafael Nadal week, speaking of
Hmm.
de Minaur.
Yeah, what to say about the week? Nadal won a first match, which we kind of knew watching it, even considering both performances. It hasn't been that big of a test overall. I would say that baseline quality was okay, considering all things considered. The serve was, of course, not good, especially he wasn't playing 100%. I can understand why, for sure. And so I really don't know what I have to take from this week, because for sure he's got to be a bit more careful. He also said it in press conference. Overall, the feeling, especially in the match against the Minor, is that till a certain point he was able to go toe to toe, but in that match against the Minor, considering the level he was able to bring, he needed to go through a long battle in order to beat the Minor, and he wasn't still able to produce that effort. Now he's in Madrid, and I think that having watched it in him in Barcelona, it's going to tell us more, the version we will watch in Madrid, because at least we will be able to make some kind of comparison, saying if another week, 10 days have passed, and the question will be, is he got a bit better than what we saw in Barcelona? And I think that at least watching him into another tournament, at least we will be able to make some kind of comparison and have a clearer idea about his process. And but still, I'm not that optimistic, honestly, because yeah, I know that he played some good shots, he had something, the back end was looking quite good, but is it enough? For me, still not to be really optimistic about him and his, let's say future. I think that, I don't know, my feeling is that it's kind of inevitable what it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing crazy happens in the next 3-5 events, it's going to be the last season. Where he finishes it, who the hell knows? I was definitely not as optimistic as some people were after the Koboli match. It did seem like Flavio was just very nervous and also like not really handling the Rafa spin too well to the backhand side. But
Yeah.
yeah, the serving of Nadal was just extremely weird, and like Koboli was doing nothing to take advantage of that. Which again, I mean, of course, that's not something I'm blaming Rafa for. I mean, he clearly was conserving it a little bit and Maybe he still has some left there, but even when he tried to maybe go a bit bigger against the minor, it was clear it's not that big a weapon at the moment. Of course, on clay it's not as important, but well, physically he also didn't have what it takes to compete with the minor, which is, it's just the first event after one more three month, almost maybe 3.5 month break. So it's perfectly fine, but it doesn't really scream Roland Garros winner. Then
Hmm.
again, of course, he's a guy who's pulled it off many times, despite not screaming Roland Garros winner, really. And especially maybe that 2022 campaign when he had the foot injury, and no one would ever really predict him winning the French at the end of the season. But, well, at the end of the season, at the end of the clay season. But he actually did. And that was quite different because there his game and his physicality was clearly there, but he was just struggling with pain, and here it seems like he just can't really regain the usual service motion. Like it's very different. Here he really needs more rhythm. Back then he probably didn't, but was just in pain most of the matches. So yeah, it's incomparable. And I guess we have to just keep watching and then just take whatever we can really off of that Nadal potential run. I said it on the stream a couple of times this week, and I was very shocked that the minor was not the favorite against Nadal. I think some massive overreaction happened after Nadal beat Koboli. In the end, Alex was just a little too good, even on clay at the moment. But it's also not the worst start to the probably farewell swing, but we'll see. And yeah, I also mentioned Fils there that he beat the minor, but I think while it could have been a huge thing for the youngster and like could have been a real back on track thing, he kind of mitigated it himself by losing to Lajovic in the quarterfinals. But maybe if we saw Tsitsipas Fields in the semis, maybe then actually the story of the whole event sort of changes, and maybe then we have a different final between the two guys. Yeah, I guess with that we could just maybe move over to Munich then and talk
Yeah.
about that first title for Jan Lennart Struff, which I think everyone was rooting for today, including even Taylor Fritz's girlfriend, including Taylor Fritz's coach. Like everyone was just, let's go Struffy today. And it worked, the third oldest first time ATP Tour champion.
Yeah, simply too good of a player to end his career without a major title. So I would say very very much deserved for sure, and also playing some very very good tennis, because we may say a lot about maybe that match against, for example, the semi-final against Holger Rune, but still he played some amazing tennis, and also today and the whole week actually. So he also had uh, a tough path also, because started with, I know that Botic is not, for example, in great form, but still is a two-time finalist of the event, so maybe can play well there, and then beat of course Ogier Aliassim, which is still someone that you need to beat even if he's not the best version of himself, and then of course Rune and Fritz. So yeah, but whoever you beat, I think that the main thing for him is for sure getting finally this major title. A player who, it just wasn't feeling right, in my opinion, that he was without a title at this level. So yeah, me myself, I admit I was cheering for him to get it, because also what he did last year was amazing, coming back from the injury, getting back to the level. He was actually one set away from winning a Masters title. I know that it was still a long way, because against Alcaraz, and especially in a court like Madrid, but still he was one set away. Mm, and for all he did, and also a guy that you don't want to face. He got some very good wins on all surfaces actually, and so yeah, I would say that it's been a very very good storyline from that event, and glad that happened, because yeah, as I said many times, he is a player who always feel like somewhat a threat, even if maybe is not always the best version of himself on the court, but overall he is very good. And he it felt impossible that that he had no title. So yeah, very good one, and also in an event that must feel quite special for him, because in Germany he was a finalist there also 3 years ago. So yeah, I would say that it's kind of a good narrative where everyone feels like justice has been made, in my opinion, because he has the tennis, of course, to be an ATP Tour champion. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and for years he was constantly mentioned in all these conversations of like
Yeah,
first the best player not to win a title. You had Struff, you had Krajinovic, you had Davidovich Fokina. It's not as clear as on the women's side, or like Shelby Rogers will probably never win a title now, and it's crazy. But Struff is kind of like the Shelby Rogers in that group, I guess. Maybe even after last year with a bigger final. I remember when he had the injury, of course, around
yeah,
he had the
exactly.
injury like in the first half of 2022. Yeah, the foot injury. He was like 213 for the year when he played Alcaraz at Wimbledon. Then he won Braunschweig, but didn't
Yeah.
really follow it up right away. And I actually remember talking to him in Braunschweig, and I even mentioned that first title. So yeah, it's sort of like is that important for him? Is that something he still wants to chase? And of course, that was so early after the injury. He was like very cautious when it comes to that, and like probably wasn't thinking that he was gonna get so many chances. And he goes to Madrid. He plays a great match actually against Alcaraz, and he the biggest final of his career, right? Then Stuttgart, he has one championship point. So like to me, he never actually had a block in these finals.
No, absolutely.
Maybe at the beginning of his career in semis, because for a while he had a terrible record in semis. He actually didn't get to one to a final until 2021 Munich, as you mentioned. But like the two finals that he played last year, they were pretty perfect. Like even the match win against Tiafoe, nothing really egregious. Like he was really delivering in them. He just wasn't able to get over the line. So yeah, this is absolutely the best sort of the best story I think of the week, the feel good one, the one that everyone sort of wanted for many years by now. And obviously you got some emotional reactions from Struff as well, given that this was clearly something that, well, everyone was asking him about it, and if it would be weird if he wasn't thinking about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So too big of a thing. All of us were like, even maybe some people who follows tennis and know these kind of players like Struff, but maybe they aren't too much into stats. And maybe you tell them Struff hasn't won a title, and they are like, what? Never, not even at 250 somewhere, and it was that kind of player. So yeah, and overall, especially for sure the big narrative is him finally getting the title, but also talking about the tennis he played, very good, also in quite tough conditions, because in Munich hasn't been the best week possible in terms of the cold and the weather, and it hasn't been very easy. I saw also Geralia's team with that ski gloves during I don't know if it was a changeover. I wasn't watching live that match. I just watched it on the social. So also in condition that maybe weren't also the easiest one to play in. And Struff, maybe also as a true German player, kind of used to those conditions. He really played well, scored amazing wins in the semis and in the final, especially two straight sets win against great players. And yeah, now let's see, he got now 600 points to defend in Madrid, but let's see if he can. I still bet that he can do well in the next months for sure. So I will be interesting to watch how he does.
Yeah, and it's of course every single time he was reaching a final, we were also thinking that this might be one of the last opportunities. This might be the last opportunity, pretty much since he made the first one, even right in Munich in 2021. Like even then, it was a conversation. Okay, so maybe this is the last chance he gets, and it never was actually, because he managed to earn more and make more. And yeah, it's what a fantastic effort, and in general as well. the entire week was just phenomenal from him. The patch that he had in the final from like 4-5 to 0 in the second set, just unplayable. I think maybe people already kind of forgot that in the first set he had to save 3 set points, I think, at 4-5. So it wasn't as easy as well as it might seem on paper, but yeah, absolutely fantastic. And he will turn 34 on Thursday, I think, which puts him,
Yeah.
of course, at like 33 years and 11 months. Only legends ahead of him, Paolo Lorenzi and Victor Estrella Burgos, the guys who basically got to the top 100 when they were over 30. So very different careers to Jan-Lennart Struff. But,
Yeah,
Estrella Burgos
that's
still
also,
earned 3 titles, right?
yeah, that's also maybe also the main difference between him and those two names you mentioned also. And what was actually making even more weird, the fact that Struff had not an ATP Tour title, also because he kind of was here for a while. So that was also one of these reasons why it was even more strange to see him titleless. But fortunately, this is not a narrative anymore, so I think that we can just move on. It's a great player, so very very much deserve this one. And I don't know, wanted to ask you, what can we make about Rune and this tournament and this weird semifinal. um yeah, I don't know, what do you think? He's a player I'm getting so many contrasting thoughts in my mind every week. um but yeah, a bit difficult for me to judge the week, for as from his point of view.
Yeah, the parallels continued with Świątek and Rune. They both lost in the semifinals, but in very contrasting fashion. I absolutely have no clue how to respond to your question, Jean, because yeah, it just seems like Rune will not be a certainty in Madrid. But then again, let's say he makes the final, the semis, will we be surprised? No. So yeah, at this stage, I will just enter the Madrid draw, whatever it is, because we still don't have it. It's gonna be tomorrow, but like whatever it is, I will just enter it thinking, yeah, sure, Rune might lose in the second round to um, Martin Landaluse, but he might as well just make the final or even win the event, and
Um,
that's kind of where I will be. Very much on the fence, but like that's where you have to be with the guy right now. 2 matches in Munich, he looks great, and then he goes out in 45 minutes. Was there something physical? Was it just like yet another of these very weird performances he's had recently, like Marozhan, like Nakashima? Who knows? And Sean says that Rune will probably click when he's 22 or 23, which I think is a very good
can be.
prediction. I mean, people forget how sort of where Yannick Sinner was at Rune's age, for
Yeah,
example,
absolutely.
which is pretty much where Holger Rune was, maybe even a little behind, with also physical issues, but no ATP 1000 title, for example. Fonseca did get a wildcard for Madrid. Yes, indeed. It's a very youngster heavy, IMG heavy list of wildcards. Darwin Blanche, Martin Landaluce, Zizou Perks, Yunchek Shang, Joao Fonseca. Basically, Miami all over again. And
Yeah, I would say
yeah,
that as for this all Madrid wildcard thing, for sure I like it, all this stuff, all these young players, but at sometimes it can be a little bit questionable. But I'm thinking, for example, that Martinez, who is 57 in the world, got that big run in Estoril, and is not with a wild card in the biggest event held in Spain. Maybe in other parts of the world this wouldn't have happened, but it's also due to the EMG stuff. I don't know. There are both good and maybe not so good things about this.
I don't know if Joao Fonseca is actually with IMG, but well, maybe he's just one of these ones that
No,
is
I mean, I'm talking,
basically.
generally about the
No,
wild card.
I'm talking about the question from Gene,
Ah,
basically.
okay.
But maybe he's just an exemption, because well, he is so good anyway. But even if he isn't, he could be getting wildcards to these events simply because they want him there. they want him to like keep building up the headlines and yeah, just bring in some ice. But other guys definitely Shang, Bergs, Landaluse, Blanche, they are all IMG for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's always kind
mhm.
of funny, for me to see always the difference between Madrid and Rome when it comes to the wild cards, because Rome is actually so, Italian players all the way. And I mean, they're not wrong, given that, Italy is also a great generation. Indeed, nobody was even expecting when they gave the wild card to Sharapova in 2018, but because they didn't, give the wild card, not even to Murray, for example, lately. And then there is Madrid, which is, much more open, but for sure the organization is totally different. And so, but for me, it's a bit funny for sure to go from one way, giving the wild cards to the other, which I think are both, too much, at the opposite. And I would prefer, something in between, maybe, just from
Yeah,
my philosophy, my point of view,
I would agree with that. Like something probably like in between in terms of two maybe wild cards that are from simply from Spain, young talented players, or someone like Pedro Martinez, who should be in this draw really, and the rest goes to the organizer. It's
Mhm.
actually pretty rare that like the organizer gets to decide everything, but I guess maybe that's the terms IMG is going for because it's only
Yeah.
at their events. I think that it happens. When does Madrid start and how long does it last, Alex? Well, basically lasts the whole 2 weeks. Tomorrow is going to be the first day of the qualifying, and the final will be on Sunday, but not next Sunday, but just the Sunday, 2 Sundays from here, basically. Yeah, it's 2 weeks anyway, with main draw action starting on Wednesday. When it comes to Munich, one last question for you, as we're gonna, I think, be speeding up a little bit, but ATP 500 in Munich next year, based on what we saw this time, yay or nay?
Doubtful, meaning that I'm sure that I don't doubt the fact that for sure it's tournament well organized, and so I'm not doubting that. But yeah, for sure the weather, also the risk that it's super super cold like it's been this week, it's very high. I mean, in the end, they will just maybe reply if I, answer them, ask them a question, that they still got to finish well the tournament, and the 500 draw is more or less the same, just four more main draw matches than a 250. But still, yeah, I don't think that for sure it's the ideal conditions, as for 20th of April, maybe, to, mm, to play a tournament in the good weather and all this stuff. But in the end, I cannot really say anything. I'm just a bit doubtful, let's say, about that. There are, for sure many things that must go in the right way, because it's a location that it's subjected to, a lot of rain, a lot of cold temperatures we saw this year. But yeah, in the end, as long as they finish the tournament, and they, everything goes in the end quite well, we cannot really in the end say anything.
Yeah, I don't know if you're sarcastic or not, Gene, because snow in Munich is actually a bit of a theme. Like it's happening at the event like every 2 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, just before this week, it was very hot in Munich, but well, of course, not this time. The only thing I'm sort of like, I mean, they really should have some lights because the quarterfinals were
Oh
ridiculous
yeah,
in that they put 4 matches on center court and they didn't even finish them, despite neither going like super long. They didn't finish the
yeah,
fourth
that's
match.
right.
And like, why would you put 4 quarterfinals on center then? I mean, obviously to earn money, but yeah, I don't know. Bucharest was a very different case. We're gonna get there in a second, but like Bucharest was actually hampered by rain on that day as well, and that's why they didn't finish. Munich just didn't have lights and didn't care apparently. So maybe if they sort that out for next year, I would be welcoming to that idea. Of course, this event is gonna happen anyway. Probably next week in this time slot, it's gonna be just Barcelona and Munich. We'll see how the players decide to schedule themselves, who goes where basically. And yeah, we also need to talk about Bucharest, of course, where Marton Fucsovics won his second ATP Tour title, and that's after 6 years. Geneva 2018 being his previous one. But since, I mean, he's only fallen out for the top 100 for like 4 weeks, so he's been a very regular part of the circuit. And it's actually kind of funny. I think by now also everyone has forgotten how Fucsovics' week started, because he was 0-6 down in the first set tiebreak
Yeah.
against Vachereau. He won that tiebreak and he won the title.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all three titles winners have this kind of first since or first above, because it's been Ruud, first title above 250 level, first ever ATP title for Struff, and first titles in 6 years for Fucsovics. So yeah, I would say that more or less the narrative, it's not the same, but there are kind of similarities in the way we can talk about them. And yeah, I mean, pretty big week for sure for Fucsovics, as you mentioned. Also, that comeback was very good and started actually a very good week. Fucsovics, it's not like he hasn't had his, let's say, peak weeks, meaning good runs. For example, the Wimbledon quarterfinal in 2021 throughout this 6 year. But as for example, what we said about Struff and also maybe other player who lacks a bit of maybe titles in their cabinet, it's actually also a matter of finding that week in the tournament where can be there can be your chance to get it. And Marton did it, played very well, overall. And the final, there has been a little bit ups and downs in terms of the scoreline, but overall it's been a good final. I watched it, and yeah, Martin just played well and got a title, which the same case as Struff. I would say that it's deserved for the way he can play, the way the quality he can show on the court. Getting a second title, it's, I think, a good reward for this player, which he's also not the youngest anymore on the tour. So yeah, I would say that it's been a very, very good week for him, and also important for his ranking, because having this ranking boost for sure will help him in the future event, also for the Masters. If we think about it, he was lacking a bit of runs, and his ranking went down a bit lately. So it's actually important also for this ranking point of view. So I would say that a good week, which has also come in at the right time for him.
Yeah, and sometimes you get players who like kind of luck out into like an opportunity because other top seeds have gone out. Fucsovics kind of just beat all the top seeds because
Yeah.
he beat Grigspor in the second round, he beats Stabilo in the semis, he beats Navone in the final. So basically, 3 of the 5 top seeds. That he eliminated them, and obviously deserves a lot of credit for that. A bit of a wild final where I think his experience actually was kind of like the main deal. Navone certainly could have done much better at the tail end of both sets, but well, he didn't, and it's Marton Fucsovics indeed picking up his first title in 6 years. And we maybe will also mention from Bucharest. I mean, we did already sort of touch on Navone, but obviously it's a very impressive streak of events for him by now. Rio final, semis in Marrakesh, final in Bucharest. I mean, if anyone was sort of thinking, I don't know if this guy will be as good as he was on the Challenger Tour, on the main tour as well. Well, clearly he is. And in fact, I think here or in Marrakesh, he actually played better than in Rio, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And we also had Joao Fonseca, and we kind of actually followed his run on the channel as well. I think we had a watch along eventually for every single one of his matches. The one against Albot wasn't planned, but because of the rain in Munich, we actually did that too. And of course, it will sort of be very close for Joao to make the first round, to make the Roland Garros qualifying draw. We will get that list probably in a week, but it's going to be the ranking of this Monday, so of tomorrow, basically. which means that we already know where he will be ranked. And currently it's 242. Usually that's kind of like on the verge after the withdrawals. At the Australian Open, I think the last player who eventually got in was 239th in the rankings. So Fonseca would be out. But he gets a major wildcard into Madrid as well, so there will be more opportunities to check him out. But all in all, just his Bucharest run was probably just as impressive as the one in Rio, right?
Yeah, for sure. As for Navone, yes, you said it all. Of course, the jump, at least through this clay 250 and even 500 events in Rio, even if maybe not the toughest possible, but still has been pretty. Has been totally okay, getting not a title but very very solid runs, and especially in this last couple of events he played really well. So yeah, for him, I just think that of course the next step is going to see him finally play in even bigger events, and see how we can adjust his game against maybe even bigger opposition, and let's see how we can do, and maybe even later in the year on other surfaces. And I would say that this will all be challenges it will be interesting to see how he's going to react to all these new things, but so far he's followed this, he stepped pretty well. So, and yeah, talking about Fonseca, what is not happening right now will happen just in a bit of time. So I would say that it's, yeah, for sure it will be super nice to see him playing the French Open qualifying, but at the end it's one of these cases where the player is too good to really worry. It's not this year is going to be French Open. No, it will be the
He'll
next
play Wimbledon qualifying.
Wimbledon.
I think
Yeah,
it's
for example.
literally impossible that he won't at this stage.
Considering
So yeah.
exactly, considering also all the wild card that he's getting, and considering also that he uses them well because he's a very good player. So I would say that for sure there was this French Open qualifying cut narrative, and would have been amazing for sure, but I'm also am like, okay, it's going to be the next. So yeah, very good player. I mentioned also after Rio, I enjoy him also. Game style is also one of these players that I'm sure that I enjoy and will enjoy in the future. So I'm really following with interest in his footsteps. And yeah, I will be very pumped to see when he is going to start playing even bigger opponents. Given that, for example, he got this Madrid wild card, we'll see also the draw he will get. And yeah, just for me, not much pressure because he is very good. So I have definitely no doubt that I'm going to satisfy all my curiosity about him. If not in 1 week, if not in 1 month, it will be in 3 4 1 year, but I'm sure I will be satisfied.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am of that same sort of idea. I think the only real sort of people who are worried about Fonseca losses right now are either like the overreactors who just after every loss say, "Oh yeah, this guy's just
Exactly.
yeah, he's not good enough. I mean, he sucks." And also
Overrated.
the overrated, overhyped, and also the fans, like these guys who like yeah, are just
Yeah.
really desperate to see him do well. Yes, they will also worry about losses, but yeah, I'm also like just a very like a chill person in terms of that. Yeah, just yeah, he didn't get into Roland Garros. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. If he doesn't, there's Wimbledon, there's 100 other chances,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
basically yeah, everything will come at its own time. Everything sort of is in the grand design, and Fonseca actually treats it like this too. It seems so. So that's always great if a youngster is willing to take it step by step and slow, and not necessarily just yeah, put too much pressure on himself to be top 10, top 100 right away.
Yeah.
And let's just briefly at the end talk about Madrid. We've had some withdrawals from there. A few deserve a mention. I mean, we've actually had a lot of them. I think it's like 7 by now. Some of them not really too surprising. I guess Murray, of course, we knew he was injured. The same with Kazo after the ankle injury this week. But, or like McDonald hasn't played in ages. But I think the ones that probably should get a mention is both Matteo Berrettini, of course, the recent winner in Marrakesh, which, yeah, it's just very sad that he can't play this event because he was even the runner-up here a couple of years ago. And also the one that probably stole the most attention was Novak Djokovic, which means that Yannick Sinner will be the top seed in Madrid.
Yeah, I was very scared when I saw about Berrettini, because I was like, oh my god, what happened once again? Then I saw it's illness. The guy is really unlucky because finally he gets a title, he gets back on track, finally starts to play matches again, and he needs to withdraw. But I really hope for him that he will be able to play his home tournament in Rome, because since 2021 he actually never played there. 2022 and 2023 he had to withdraw in both years, and I'm sure he will really be hungry to play there in Rome. I'm sure of this. So as long as he manages to play in Rome, I think he will be okay with himself. But for sure, great unluck for him. But getting that illness, and then I saw he posted on Instagram he has tonsillitis. Yeah, so let's just hope he will be able to recover in time, because having him out of Rome for a third straight year, won't be the best, especially for him, but also for the fans who's going to to watch him, and also for everyone, because he showed that he is a player who can say his own, even when he is out for a long time straight away from being back in the competition. As for Djokovic, I mean, he's not liking to go to Madrid recently. Withdrew in 3 out of the last 4 seasons. Actually, the last 2 times he withdrew from Madrid went on to win the French Open. But, this year so far we haven't seen that much from him. So it's all a big question mark. Monte Carlo was, I would say, okay, but still not a Djokovician version of himself. Was pretty okay for a normal player, but maybe not for him. Let's see what is going to happen. Usually the real Djokovic has been, starting showing up in Rome, even if last year maybe not even in Rome and directly at the French Open. But also time is passing, and there are also strong players. So we'll just see. I'm not really sure about him right now. The thing I've seen so far, it's not enough to make me like, I think he is going to go into the French as the favorite, but at the same time he's Djokovic, and you don't want to write him off because you are scared about then him winning and you looking like a stupid because you have written him off from that tournament. So, but it's not encouraging, let's say, in my opinion, the way he's carrying himself, even because we haven't really seen and not even one big performance or something like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. That's usually the moment where like we've got that will the real Djokovic please stand up thing. It's in Rome usually rather than in Madrid. So yeah, it's not a big deal, but certainly it is kind of like just well, I don't even want to say puzzling. That's too strong a word, but it is a decision that I was not expecting, and sort of to pull out right away after you haven't been doing well. That's kind of something new, but obviously, yeah, it's going to take something really special to make me think that Djokovic will not be at least, at whatever right now is the peak of his abilities at the French
Oh
Open,
yeah.
because, well, he's going to do everything to be in the best
Oh yeah,
possible
sure.
shape there. And what that means at the moment, I don't really know, but he will be the best that he possibly can right now. And we also have to mention the Jakub Bobro Player of the Week, which this time goes to Francisco Comesaña for winning the Oeiras Challenger.
Yeah.
He joins his friend Mariano Navone in the in the final, in the top 100, the amazing rivalry. With Comesaña, of course, he had a pretty rough year so far. Golden Swing, nothing. Injury in March. Things were looking quite dangerous because late May to September, he's defending like a ton of points. And
Mm.
I mean it. Like he was reaching quarters, semis every week. So he has a pretty poor year so far. He changes his racket as well. This was his first event with a new racket. And I kind of did it in style because you win a Challenger 125, but at the same time, also like his level of play was still a little. He had to fight for it the entire week. He saved 3 match points in the second round against Elias Ymer. He then in the semifinals he came back from 5-7 and 1-4 down to Jaime Faria. And today in the final was as well a very dramatic
Mm.
finish against Hugo Blanchet. So that's our choice for Jakub Bobro Player of the Week. I think we're still operating in this like territory of players who Jakub would remember. I remember covering with Jakub the first 2 challenger titles with Comesaña in 2022. So by now definitely we're not yet reaching players who Jakub never saw on court yet with this award. Although that will inevitably at some point come, but
Yeah.
Comesaña was definitely still on his radar before his unfortunate death. And
Big moment for Argentinian tennis, because at least ranking wise, because there's going to be 5 into the top 50 for the first time since 2012, and also on the female side, because 3 top 100 players for the first time since 2005. So it's was actually a very, very long time. So yeah, it's a nation that is trying to give some good players to the sport, and they are doing it quite successfully right now. So yeah.
Any closing thoughts on Madrid? Obviously we don't have the draw there. Any
It's superbly
guy
difficult.
like, huh?
It's superbly difficult,
Yeah.
of course, because of all we have been mentioned about the big players, but for sure the 2 players who have done well in this clay season will be some to watch for sure, even if maybe I don't know, Madrid is also even a little bit maybe different, with the altitude and all this stuff. Let's see. It's just a start, but Sinner will be first seed for the first time in his career in a Masters. Let's see what happens, but there are a lot of questions that we will try to answer. A lot of times then we have not answered to all of them, but we will try to. And Madrid will be for sure a very interesting one. Let's see if, like last year, will be a tournament full of surprises, of maybe it will be just tournament where maybe all the top seeds will drive their way to the final stages. Let's just see. But Madrid usually is one of these tournaments where we can see a lot of things happening, also due to maybe some of the players not liking the conditions, the altitude, struggling a bit to adjust. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, Sinner Alcaraz, of course, stand out in the draw, but Alcaraz still hasn't played a match on clay, and Sinner actually hasn't done that well historically in Madrid, although I do expect him to change it. On paper, his game should really work pretty well there, and Alexander Zverev maybe deserves a bigger shout out than usual, because his record in Madrid is like something insane. Was like 18-4 or something like that. I can't even remember right now, but it's
Yeah, three
something like
finals,
this. Yeah,
one
he won in 2021,
finals.
won in 2018, and the last 2 editions he only lost to Carlos Alcaraz. So basically, anytime he shows up there, both the altitude and also like this semi-indoor vibe that the main court
Yeah.
has, that's definitely quite good for him, and he's serving especially. And when I say semi-indoors, of course it's not indoors, but like a lot of
Yeah, all
the
the
range.
stadium is very, and
Yeah, there's not that much space for the air to flow freely, and it's
yeah,
similar.
we have
Well,
the
it's
roofs.
even bigger in Halle, I guess. But yeah,
We have the roofs which for a lot of masters there's
yeah.
not the case. So it's, if it rains also, rain should not be a main part of the tournament regardless of the weather. So that's a good thing about that tournament.
Yes, indeed. And with that, I think we'll be wrapping up. We gave
Yeah.
you the Bucharest, Barcelona, and Munich update. And of course, we also tried our best to talk about Madrid a little bit. But as usual, without the draw, it's just very
Yeah.
tough to do it. Tomorrow, the first day of the qualifying, lots of action there. And also the men's draw will be coming out tomorrow. And for now, I think we just can say thank you for attention and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all